Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, and the Portland Board of Education is meeting virtually through Zoom. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Ms. Bondo.
Présente.
Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Irish.
Here.
Señor Rodriguez.
Presente.
Ms. Russell-Better.
Here.
Ms. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow.
Here.
Mr. Youssef.
Here.
Ms. Allen.
Here.
Ms. Chung.
Here.
Ms. Boxer-McCumber.
Here.
Ms. Hill.
She's here. She's on the attendees. We just got to bring her over.
Okay. Ms. Yangala.
Yes, I'm here.
And Chair Figdor.
Here and unmuted. Sorry about that. Excellent. Would everyone please unmute yourselves for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
and
To
to
the
the
republic
For which
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
With
with liberty
and
and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are going to start tonight's meeting a little bit differently. We're going to start tonight with some recognitions for students and partners who we don't want to keep waiting through the first thing on our agenda, which is a public comment period. So I'm going to ask the superintendent to do those recognitions, and then I will review the other changes that we have to tonight's agenda. So Mr. Superintendent, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So today we're honoring 5 Portland Public School students who have been accepted to the 2021 All-State Music Festival. Selected were All-State Honors Chorus from Deering High School junior, no other than Emily Chung, who's also, of course, one of our student board reps, and also All-State Orchestra from Portland High School sophomore Cassandra Lurch on the violin. All-State Jazz Ensembles, we have Portland High School juniors Graham Ganter on violin and Christopher Kavukian on the guitar, and sophomore Benjamin Dieno also on the guitar. So students are recommended by their teachers for All-State based not only on outstanding musical ability, but also for being significant contributors to their public school ensembles as performers, as section leaders, and as mentors to other high school students. According to Julianne Averill, who's our music director and conductor of the high school band, she told us that, quote, being accepted to the All-State Honors Ensembles is the highest level of achievement in performing groups in our state. So this year has been a particularly challenging one for all of our students, including these amazing musicians. And so the selection process included remote auditions, learning new technology, finding new ways to develop and demonstrate their artistic talents. So we're incredibly proud of your dedication and your perseverance. This would be a great accomplishment under any circumstances, and it's so much more in our current context. So congratulations and amazing, great work, guys. It's also been particularly challenging for their teachers. So in addition to Ms. Averill, who I mentioned earlier, I would also like to thank our Portland High School music teacher, Jane Sawtell, and our Deering High School music teacher, Chris Giddings. Thank you to all 3 of you for your amazing work you also had to figure out how to do all of these things in different settings with different rules. And so we can't thank you enough for your dedication and your commitment to our students. So thank you, all three of you. These recognitions are not the same when you can't like actually stand up and do the. So anyway, but thank you guys and congratulations, and keep up the tremendous work. So we've been fortunate for the past few months to have Carrie Gavin, who many of you have met, as our interim director of data and technology. You're going to meet our new director later today when we go into the regular thing. But in this past year, which has been extraordinarily challenging for all of us, but no more so than for our IT team, Carrie has been a tremendous support to the work that we've been doing. Carrie has been with us since the end of October, and we just feel incredibly fortunate to have had him with us for that time. Just before this past week's break, we finally achieved one-to-one technology status at all of our grades. As you heard throughout the fall, this has been a particularly challenging thing to do because finding computers for all of our students during the pandemic has been challenging because of the tremendous global demand for devices. Tonight, we want to give special thanks and acknowledgement to representatives from Goodall for assisting the district in securing enough Chromebooks to ensure every student in the district now has a computer for remote learning. So we'd like to thank Rich Miner, who's the founder of Android and a part-time Maine resident, and that's how all of these connections started. And Rich put us, who knows Carrie, put us in touch with Google's educational representative for the Northeast, and with Angela Larkin, who is the Google K-12 sales manager. And we're especially grateful. We're grateful to Sam Cannon-Kaplan, who's the Northeast representative, and especially thankful to Angela, who I believe could not join us today, but she was able to track down the 1,600 Chromebook devices and made them available to us. So thank you to our Google friends, and thank you, Carrie, for all that you've done for Portland Public Schools in the past few months. And we could not have done it without all of you, so thank you. Okay, and with that, I will turn it back to our chair.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I want to talk through the changes to our agenda tonight. So everyone in attendance is clear about our plan. So we made these changes yesterday for two reasons. First, our meeting was too packed tonight. And second, we wanted to give the public an opportunity to learn more about our high school reopening plans, including the racial disparities in high school attendance and performance this school year, to help inform the public comment on the plan. So we're going to start the meeting by taking public comment on any issue that we are not voting on tonight, as previously planned. For those of you who are here tonight to comment on high school reopening, I do ask that you hold your comments until after Superintendent Batana's presentation and board member questions on school reopening. You'll be more informed after that conversation, and we'll give you an opportunity to comment then. But if you prefer, you may comment now as well. But I wanted to say that I want to ask people to just comment one time on school reopening tonight. So we have a packed agenda and we won't be able to hear from the same person multiple times about school reopening. So in terms of other changes to the agenda, they are twofold. First, when we get to the board focus on educational issues, we're going to start with the presentation on the LAU plan. Then we'll move to school reopening. And as I just mentioned, we'll hear from the public after the superintendent and board's discussion about school reopening. The final change is that we moved a couple of items from this week's agenda to our March 2nd meeting. Those items are consideration of the school year 2021-2022 calendar and the resolution urging the state to prioritize teachers for vaccinations. So we'll consider and vote on both of those issues next week. So with that, let's get started on public comment. Again, if you're here to talk about high school reopening, you will have an opportunity again to comment on the presentation on high school reopening after the superintendent's presentation and our discussion later in the meeting. You can speak to the board about school reopening just one time tonight, either now or after our discussion about it, but not both times. So if you want to address the board, please use the raise your hand feature provided by Zoom. This feature is found on the webinar control bar at the bottom of your screen, or can be found by selecting your name on the participant screen. And let me run through our procedures for how public comment will be taken. So for members of the public with their hand raised, I will call on you using your Zoom name. Please start by stating your name and address. Then you'll have up to 3 minutes to address the board. Should you near the 3-minute mark, I will see if additional time is needed. Any additional 3 minutes may be granted by the board. If this additional time is granted and the speaker reaches the 6-minute mark, please know that your mic will be muted. So let's start, and I see some hands up. So let's start with Georgia. And Georgia, I'm going to...
Can you hear me?
Yep. So go ahead,
perfect.
Georgia.
I'm Georgia Littell. I live on 49 Rosemont Ave here in Portland, and I'm a junior at Portland High School. Having gone to Portland High School and having experienced the in-person learning there has really changed me and bettered me as a person. I am thankful for all my teachers and for the diverse students I interact with every day. We all realize that we're not living in normal times anymore. I have not been in school since March of last year. Portland's approach to addressing COVID has unfairly excluded 10th through 12th graders. We have been and still are remote and have been told it's too complicated for us to return to in-person learning. But we have also seen other communities whose students have been able to thrive with in-person learning under the same circumstances. I think we should return 10th to 12th graders to at least 2 days a week of in-person class time. I do not believe it would be beneficial for us to have classes in the morning and then to reiterate the learning in the afternoon twice a week. This seems like a waste of time to me and many other students. The only way the situation is going to get better and we are going to be able to improve is if we start getting 10th through 12th graders back to school at least 2 times a week. I attend all my remote classes and do the best I can to pay attention in every single one of them. Frankly, I'm just not learning the same amount I was learning during in-person class time at school. Honestly, I don't think it's asking a lot. I'm just simply asking that we make a plan for 10th through 12th graders to go back to school at least twice a week for in-person teaching time, not the afternoon learning center, but face-to-face learning time with fellow classmates. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Georgia. Now we have Johnny Bouchard.
You can hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Johnny Bouchard. I live on 54 9th Street. I'm a sophomore at Portland High School. I'm speaking because I really would like to go back to school, and I'm tired of being in my room constantly and on my computer. But I appreciate my teachers, and I miss seeing them in person. But imagine trying to learn how to play a guitar on Google Meets. It's really hard. And also art. I don't have space for all that. And that's a good reason why I want to go back to school. On top of that, it's also hard to learn with a short amount of time, only 40 minutes in each class. And I feel like I'm not getting taught the amount that I was when I was in school. So, and then you get loads of homework after only having 40 minutes to being taught. So I just think it's really overwhelming. And I miss seeing all my friends and teachers at school. And I hope that we can get back in school at least 2 times a week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Johnny. Next is Angel.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Angel Oriana. I live at 1500 Forest Ave. I'm a sophomore at Portland High School, and I think that we should go back to school. I can find it very difficult to learn online, and when it comes to homework, it can get very difficult to do sometimes. I like my teachers, but the class time is short, and the assignments can get pretty hard. I'd love if we could go back to being taught by teachers and being with friends. So let's make things right. Let's go back to school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angel. Next, we'll hear from Anthony Martinez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Martinez. I live at 1500 Forest Ave, and I'm a sophomore at Portland High School. I don't understand why it's so hard for us to go back to school. My friends in other towns, they all get to go to school. They get to see their friends and teachers at school. So why can't we, you know? At least a hybrid schedule would make school more enjoyable and less confusing. I spend most of my days in my room with my Chromebook, not motivated to do anything. And it's especially hard when it feels like I don't have anyone to turn to. The schoolwork itself is super confusing, and it feels like I'm not learning anything. I really miss being in school with my friends every day. I hope soon we can go back to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Next, we'll hear from Jake Bouchard.
Hi there.
Go ahead, Jake.
My name is Jake Bouchard. I go to Portland High School and I live on 54 9th Street. I'm a senior and I feel like it's very unfair that we don't get to go back to school. I think it's really important for us because especially with us going to college in the next year, it's going to be really hard for us to maintain our learning skills as students. And I feel like us going back to school brings some normality back to our lives. And also the fact that I haven't had my senior year all year. And I think that it's important for us to go back because we've missed out on things like homecoming, Spirit Week, prom, like it's just like all those certain things I just wish that we had. But I think that going back to school and having that little bit of normality back in our lives will help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jake. Next, we'll hear from Stacy Hanson.
Going to be her husband, Brad. Thank you, Madam Chair. But my wife is here with me. We're parents of a 12th grader at Casco Bay High School on, 33 Heather Road in Portland, and also an 8th grader at Lyman Moore Middle School. We're here to speak about our support for returning 10th through 12th graders 2 days a week. The Portland Public Schools is adopted and lives by the Portland Promise, and one of the tenets is equity. And the equity includes eliminating factors that contribute to variable rates of student success and participation, adopting target practices that successfully promote equity, strengthening family engagement in school, and forging partnerships to bring in resources, experience, and talents of the whole community. With the exception of the last one, the current 10 through 12 policy doesn't advance equity. In fact, it takes it a step backwards. The current proposal to use learning centers does not really resolve the inequity faced by our 10th through 12th graders. It continues an unlevel playing field, and it leaves questions as to why 10th through 12th graders continue to be treated differently. The arguments for full remote don't seem to wash anymore. The federal CDC has stated that it's relatively safe to reopen schools. And any study indicating that 15 through 18-year-olds are somehow at greater risk for transmission hasn't held up. Otherwise, we likely would have heard about it from surrounding communities and school districts, none of which have a policy like the Portland Public Schools does. Our buildings may be old and may have limited space, but with universal masking, 6 feet isn't always needed. In fact, that's the idea behind masks. They're used for instances when 6 feet can't be maintained. We have a limited amount of time left in the year. It's now almost March. There isn't a lot of time left for discussion or consideration of our next steps. We've lost the early part of the year when we had great weather and the possibility of outdoor learning, and a number of weeks and months even when we were at green level, or Cumberland County was at green level according to the State Department of Education. But we can't worry about what's behind us and only what's in front of us. And so we're taking this opportunity to ask the board to please allow 10th or 12th graders to come back as the 9th graders do, or at least as K through 8 do, 2 days a week in class rather than learning center only. We thank you for your consideration.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Brad and Stacy. I apologize for my delay there. Next, we're going to hear from Darshana Spatch. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sam Spock, and I live on 64 Hill Street, and I'm a senior at Casco Bay High School. This year, online learning has been extremely challenging for everyone, and especially as a senior, I don't feel as prepared for next year. The engagement that we get and the rigor that students have in person class is not achievable over a Zoom meeting. We need to have in-person learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Nicole Berdine.
Thank you. This is Nicole Bradine, 59 Edgeworth in Portland. First off, thank you, school board members. Thank you, superintendent, administrators, principal, staff, and of course, a huge thank you to our teachers. You're doing extraordinary things during this crisis, and we applaud you for your work. I want to preface my comments by sharing that I'm an educator. My husband is an educator, and my 73-year-old mother is an educator, all in middle and high school. So I speak from the perspective of an educator and parent. I also know that this meeting is focused on getting high schoolers back, and I believe that that is very important, but wanted to plant the seed about potentially increasing time for elementary schools. Given everything we know about the decrease in cases and the guidelines from Maine and the CDC, I believe that we should be continuing the conversation. I speak for many students and families that aren't able to speak for themselves because people are, both students and families, are completely overwhelmed by teaching, parenting, and working, or don't otherwise know how to navigate the system. I know you are aware of the research and urgency around this as it relates to families' mental health issues, academic and social emotional engagement, and economic loss. The hybrid model was meant to be as a temporary phase, and I would like to revisit it. That gradual increase in school is especially important as we start to think about returning full-time in the fall. We need to make strides towards that now for both the benefit of the students and the teachers. Students need to relearn how to engage with adults and their classmates, to sustain attention, and to build stamina for being at school. The more that we can all engage, the more data we will have as to how to meet their needs, how to rebuild our communities, and how to capitalize on our assets. Everyone will benefit. Well, whether you are able to bring kids back full-time, extend the day, add Wednesdays, or use the outdoor infrastructures that were created in the fall, please consider engaging us as parents in that conversation, as we have been on the front lines with our kids as well. I hope you will share your decision-making timeline, data, and sticking points so that we can come together as a community and support one another. Thank you so much for your energy and consideration.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Now we're going to hear from Daniel.
I'm having trouble unmuting Daniel.
Let's see, Daniel, are you there now?
I don't know what happened. He just disappeared.
Okay. Daniel, we will try to get you back at the top of the queue. Meanwhile, let's hear from Anya Frank.
Hi, my name's Anya Frank. I live on 56 Leland Street in Portland, Maine, and I'm a sophomore at Deering High School. This year has been a struggle. Going a year without in-person learning has affected my ability to socialize. It has increased depression and anxiety among many, as well as myself. I'm saddened by how much I took school for granted. I now realize how much joy, stability, and security it brought into my life. I say this for myself and my fellow classmates. We need an opportunity to go back, to feel empowered by our community, to laugh at stupid jokes. We need to be filled by each other's presence, embracing each other's experiences and perspectives. This isn't something that we want. It's a need for many and an absence in our lives that is so heavy. I'm afraid of the memories that have been lost, the experiences I've missed. I fear I won't get to see my brother graduate. The loss of such a crucial social environment has made me question whether or not I have the social skills needed for daily interaction. I understand all of the things that come with this ask, but please step outside and truly look at it from an alternative perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anya. Okay, now we're going to go back to Daniel. And Daniel, go ahead.
My name is Daniel Niles. I live at 1831 Washington Ave, and I'm a sophomore at Portland High School. The online learning and other learning opportunities, such as the learning centers, are frankly just a waste of resources. I honestly believe that my education would have suffered less if I'd been pulled out of school and waited for in-person schooling to return before re-enrolling. Learning centers have been an utter failure from my perspective. Even though students were promised at least one day a week of learning center, I've only been invited to learning centers, virtual or in person, for a total of 5 times. I fully learned this year, but have a deep desire to do so. I only hope you allow 10th and 12th graders to go back in person before this whole year goes to waste. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Now we're going to hear from Peggy Spencer. Peggy, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Peggy Spencer. I live at 57 Jackson Street in Portland, Maine. Thank you for inviting the public to speak here today. I appreciate it. 10th through 12th graders need to be prioritized in Portland's response to this pandemic. While most high schools in the state are upgrading from their hybrid models, Portland is still resistant to offer even the most basic model of a virtual and in-person format. The current plan to offer 2 days a week for a second helping fails to provide 10 through 12 graders a reasonably accessible education for the following reasons. They are denied opportunities for social interactions with peers, teachers, and the greater community. Social isolation that they experience raises risks for mental health disorders. They lose interest and motivation at a time in their development process when they should be gaining more independence in their learning to ready themselves for college, military service, or vocational school. Additionally, I find excessive screen time is not healthy for anybody and should be reduced significantly to provide these students with an enriching learning environment. While the CDC insists students need to be back in school, Portland needs to be prioritizing 10th through 12th graders to return to the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Next, we're gonna hear from Jess Townsend. Jess, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jessica Townsend. I live at 153 Glenwood Ave in Portland. I am the mother of a 14-year-old who is a hybrid student at Lincoln Middle and a 16-year-old junior at Casco Bay High School. I have been a social worker in Yarmouth Public Schools for 10 years, and I'm a psychotherapist in the Portland area in private practice for the last 15 years. First, I'd like to begin by thanking the Portland Public Schools and School Board for the opportunity to come together for some challenging problem solving this evening. I would also like to applaud your successful implementation of a hybrid model of learning for kindergarten through ninth graders. This is no easy task, and yet you have proven it can be accomplished. A hybrid model in the time of COVID requires astute and careful planning, clear expectations of students and school employees, logistical problem solving, the ability to pivot quickly, and clear and concise communication and collaboration between schools and parents and guardians. As a parent, I have seen firsthand the benefits of returning to in-school learning. Both my children were fully remote until January, where we opted to have our middle school daughter return to in-school learning at Lincoln. The shift has been profound to watch. Reduced anxiety, reduced depression, increased engagement as a student, and even excitement with learning. Her social confidence has returned. Without a doubt, the gains are exponential, even with masks and social distancing. I'm very hopeful my son will have the same opportunity to return to hybrid in-school learning at Casco Bay High School as soon as possible. As a therapist in private practice, I have grave concerns about our youth and adults during this time. My colleagues and I are watching a mental health collective crisis unfold in real time. In the last 12 months, I have watched my clients struggle with increased cutting, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, psychotic symptoms, eating disorders, depression, and anxiety. Every clinician I know in Southern Maine is completely full, with a wait list including 50 to 100 individuals desperate right now for support. We need Portland high schools to return to what they do best: educate, support, develop positive relationships, instill hope, and keep kids safe emotionally. And we need it to be in person. So I ask, what do our high schools need in order to achieve what you have so successfully implemented for kindergarten through ninth grade with hybrid learning, with 2 days for each student, direct instruction in person? And finally, I will say that I am humbled listening to the students who are advocating for themselves and their peers this evening. It is inspiring, it is courageous, it takes enormous strength, and I think we really need to listen to their words. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Now we're going to hear from Costa.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Costa.
Hi, I'm Costa Nedeljkovic. I live at 155 Milton Street, and I am the sophomore class president at Portland High School. In a normal school day, I have class for 3 hours, and I end up having practice for 3 hours. At the beginning of the season, I was informed by my coach that I was a student athlete, not an athlete student, and that school comes before sports. Personally, now I feel that the athlete is coming before the student, and that's not okay. We need to be prepared to go to college. I have no plans on playing basketball in college or the NBA, but certainly I am getting more support to follow that direction than I am to go to college right now with the current system that we have. I need to be prepared for learning, not to mention the social aspects of being in in-person school. It is so crucial for us to look our peers and teachers in the eye when talking to them, not through a screen. We need to be back. There's no other way to put it other than kids who never wanted to be in school and looked for every single possible way to skip class and get out of class would do anything to go back at this point. Everyone's fed up, even the people who did not want to go. Can we at least go to school for 2 days a week like everyone else in Southern Maine is doing successfully? That would make the vast majority of my peers happy, and that's what is most important for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Costa. Next, we're going to hear from Michael H.
Michael Harsberger, parent of a Portland junior. When this started in the fall, I considered it regrettable, but understood that in this situation, there were going to be sacrifices, there were going to be trade-offs, those were going to have to be made, and we were all going to have some share in that. And the possibility for complete equity across different priorities with limited resources might not have been possible at that time. But I also had the expectation that the work to get back to school would begin at that time with vigor and with intent. So I have some frustration that it has taken a full 6 months to get to the point where we are considering the first changes to the situation. We're just so clearly behind the curve on this. Whatever the next step turns out to be, it needs to be done, and it needs to be done quickly. And most importantly, it needs to be considered just one step. And the planning for whatever the next step needs to be has to start immediately. We can't have another gap of 6 months to try to figure out what's going to happen next. The data evolves, and also the risks grow, and specifically the risks that we're all hearing from the children tonight. That profile changes over time consistently. And so we need to come up with plans that continue to evolve on a month-to-month basis or a quarter-to-quarter basis. It can't happen every 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Next, we're going to hear from Benjamin H. Go ahead, Benjamin.
Hi, my name is Ben Horsberger. I'm a junior at Portland. And the system in place now is extremely unmotivating, and it's hard to visualize an academic future, especially in an entirely virtual environment. As a junior, I can say that I am very unguided towards where I want to be in college and what a career path is going to look like for my future. I'm in complete support of going back to school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. Next, we're going to hear from Bill Melcher. Go ahead, Bill.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Bill Melcher. I live on Craigie Street in Portland. I have a sophomore at Portland High School. I would like to speak briefly about two items. One is I understand that there has been significant investment in increased technology for Portland Public. We have yet to see that technology trickle down to the students who are stuck at home doing all of their interactions online. It frustrates me that the public school has spent so much money on new laptops, but they have not yet been distributed. This seems like it should be a very forefront sort of immediate fix. I've been in conversations with the IT department, and they often take 3 to 4 weeks to get back in touch with me for a simple yes, no question. So the first step, regardless of whether people are going to be going back to school for 2 days or longer, is getting technology into the hands of the students who need it. The second is that I also support some form of hybrid learning. I'm on the board of trustees at Breakwater School in Portland. Although it is a private school and we are talking about a public forum right now, I should let you know that we have been open for every single day of the school year since September. It is very possible to do this. We have had no COVID infections, and I don't think it's really good for the students to keep them at home any longer. So I'm fully supportive of any increase in in-person learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Okay, next, the Zoom name that I have is a phone number. So I'm going to read that phone number. It's 207-772-4584. And you are up. And if you start by telling us your name and your street address.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Tess Conroy, and I live at 42 Pitt Street, and I'm a junior at Portland High School. After having had an entire semester of all remote learning, I can confidently say that 10th to 12th graders in Portland are missing out on a great deal, both educationally and emotionally. Having fully remote classes would not be nearly as bad if we did not also have less than half our usual class time. Students and teachers are used to having a 75-minute class period, and when that period is cut to 40 minutes, it is impossible to get through all our class material. I have had many classes where there are lots of questions or technology issues, and we run out of time to get through most of the teacher's lesson plan. I know my teachers are all doing their very best, and this makes it truly hard for me to understand why they have been given so little class time to work with. I think that the new proposed plan for adding in-person time for high schoolers is far too little, and without a start date, will be far too late. 80 minutes of review twice a week is not a substitute for the hybrid models being used by every other high school in the state. 10th to 12th graders in Portland deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Carol Pickering. Go ahead, Carol.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Superintendent Botana. Thank you, board members. Appreciate your time. And I'd like to also thank all the teachers and staff of the Portland Public Schools for their work and service. I live at 66 Alba Street, and I'm the mother of a 10th grader who goes to the Maine School of Science and Math, and the mother of a 4th grader. I urge the district to listen to the voices of Anya and Costa and increase and find a way to find in-person time for our 10th through 12th graders. While my son is not in district at the Portland Public Schools, I find it appalling that it is almost March and our high schoolers have not had any in-person time. I also find the lack of communication and visibility into the district's plans insufficient. I also would like to echo Nicole Bray-Dean's sentiments that the district consider more in-person time for elementary school kids. The cohort model is working, and I can't understand why our kids can't at least be going for a full day on the 2 days that they're in school. My youngest has significant special needs. Her education is suffering. Her mental health is suffering. I urge the district to listen to the parents and the students that need more in-person instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Next, we're going to hear from Adair E.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Adair Emmons, and I live at 50 Penwood Drive. I graduated from Deering High School last year. I don't think in-person can work while still allowing students a choice, at least not mid-semester. If a class that's going on right now switches from online to in-person, does the student get a choice to stay home? If not, I don't think it's fair to the student or their family to put them in potential danger by making that decision for them. If they do get a choice, the online option will be objectively less educational to them than the in-person learning due to lack of access to the classroom and physical resources. It's not providing a fair choice for students, especially those with at-risk family members. I understand the hardship of online learning and everything students are missing, but the fact that it's upsetting doesn't change the reality of coronavirus. It also seems dishonest to me for people to present the fact that in-person learning is better than online. No one wants online over in-person learning in general. It's just about being safe and pragmatic in extraordinary circumstances. To me, it's like saying, why can't we go stay in our house while it's being cleared of black mold? It's so much better than staying at this hotel. I also haven't heard any other callers mention teachers or their spot in the vaccine line. If you truly want to open schools safely, You should push for teachers to be vaccinated sooner. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Todd and Nell. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Todd Michaelis. I'm the father of 3 elementary school students. I'm a primary care physician in the community, and just want to echo a lot of the sentiments and encourage the folks who've talked thus far about the high school experience not to set the bar too low, because I think based on the models we've seen in other parts of the state and the country, a return to even more full-time learning is possible and safe. I think this is all a big risk-benefit equation, and we made these decisions on how to return to school in August and in a very different time where we understood the risks very, very differently than we do now. I think now we know a lot more about how coronavirus is transmitted and what those risks mean to our kids and our families. And we also recognize the benefits that we've lost by not having our kids in school for this whole time. So 6 months later, I think we can make much more informed choices about those risks and benefits. And I want to just thank everybody for the chance to advocate for getting all kids in school more. Elementary school kids in-person learning in an expanded form, as well as middle and high school kids as much as we can. I think the points about getting teachers vaccinated is well taken, but I think when we do that great risk-benefit equation, it works out to get folks back in person as much as we can.
Thank you very much, Todd. I want to, for folks who joined us after we started the meeting, I just wanted to review how to participate. I want to first thank everyone for joining us tonight. We are holding a public comment period now, and we're going to hold a public comment period after the superintendent reviews the reopening plan. And so we'll get into more of the details then. And you can only speak once tonight on school reopening. So you have the opportunity now or after the superintendent's presentation. If you want to address the board, use the raise your hand feature provided by Zoom. You can find it either on the webinar control bar at the bottom of your screen or by selecting your name on the participant screen. And for members of the public with their hands raised, I'll call on you using your Zoom name. Please start by stating your name and address, then you'll have up to 3 minutes to address the board. So I just wanted to review that for anyone who had joined us late. And with that, we are going to turn to Rachel Pargeter. And Rachel, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes. We can't hear you very well. Rachel, we can't hear you. If you wanted to, if you have another way to call back in, I can find you in the queue and put you right back at the top. Okay, Rachel's muted, so let's move to Lydia Stein.
Hi, my name is Lydia Stein. I live on 72 Gray Street in Portland, Maine, and I am a 12th grader at Portland High School. You have all heard my name numerous times, and this will probably be the last time. I have completely given up. I am not okay. My friends are not okay. We need school. It has been 1 full year since I have attended school in person. I lost my senior year. For the last 6 months, I have spoken over and over again, but it is abundantly clear that no one here values the youth voice that differs from administration and teachers. We continue to be the only district in Maine with no in-person learning. We deserve a real hybrid school schedule like everyone else. I want to take the rest of my time to speak to the other youth on this call. Your voices do matter, even though it may not feel like it right now. I hope I have modeled that it is better to use your voice than to stay silent. I have lost all my pride in the school and all of the people who are in power. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Rachel, are you there? And do you want to give it another shot? Go ahead, Rachel. Okay, I see Rachel still muted, so we will keep trying to get you on, Rachel. Meanwhile, we're going to go to E. Brady.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. E. Brady, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Aaron Brady, 257 Virginia Street. I've got 3 children in the Portland School District, 2 at Lyman Moore attending school 2 days a week, and 1 that's a junior in high school at Deering. And the difference between the two is really staggering. I've been blessed with kids that have been, very diligent about being really strong students and taking care of their homework and staying on task on their own throughout their entire education process. And seeing the difference in the online learning model versus in person with my junior is really scary, knowing that he's preparing to go to college. And well, I think you can get a good education remotely. I do not think that the way the information is being delivered, the way the technology is being used right now is even coming close to maximizing what could be done. And I don't really see that changing. And there was a study done, a couple of years ago that, when there was talk about consolidating the 2 high schools because we had more than enough room. And I just fail to see with that fact, the fact that both high schools were deemed I
think we might have lost him. Okay. Sounded like he was having trouble with his connection. Let's move to Silas. Silas, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is actually Eva Humanik. My video popped up. Silas is my 3rd grader. I'm not going to have anything as eloquently to say as the high schoolers. They're really just blowing me away. Thank you all for joining and for speaking up for yourselves. It's been really just really powerful. I'd also like to thank the school board and the superintendent and our teachers and our staff and our school leaders. You guys are all doing impossible work, as are the parents. This is challenging for all of us, and I just want to thank you for your dedication. I don't think you signed up for this. I don't think any of us did. And I'll be honest, I am fried. It's difficult for me to put into words everything that I want to say tonight, because every hour of every day, I am managing the remote learning of a third grader who has a learning disability, who's neurotypical, has an IEP, needs constant attention, a full-time job that is very demanding, a high schooler who is lethargic and losing interest in life in general, except for video games, which I am grateful for, which I never thought I would say, because it's the social interaction that he gets. But it's becoming too much on all of us. And so I think it's better to hear that from the students. I won't spend too much time talking about it, but what I do want to point out while we're talking about the high schoolers is that right now, my 10th grader goes to Casco Bay High School, and he has the the Learning Center 1 day a week for 2 hours. And if I'm being honest, as much as I love that he gets some interaction with his classmates and with his crew teacher, it's more disruptive than it is productive. It is another thing that I have to fit into an already incredibly overwhelming daily schedule. Now I've got to leave this meeting so I can take my son to school for 2 hours, and then I have to take this other meeting in my car so that I can pick him up and bring him home. And then I have to, it's so much, and it's not learning. It's invaluable because they're getting time with their peers, but they play games often, or they talk about their feelings, which again is very valuable, but it's not learning. It's not in-person learning. And so I would just like to echo what all of the high schoolers are saying. They need classroom time. They need in-person learning time. Families need some relief right now. We are all really struggling. And I would love to have future meetings and conversations about bringing back more time for the K through 8 students, especially for students who are really have additional needs. So thank you all, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Eva. Next, we're going to hear from Gabe Russell. Gabe, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gabe Russell. I live at 60 Verrill Street, and I'm a senior at Portland High School. I want to return to in-person learning because I believe online learning is often depressing and not working for most students. It consists of really short classes with little to no instruction and mostly just homework to do on your own. Students need in-person instruction to help them learn because online learning is not doing it for most students, and it's really not working. I believe that most students need in-person learning because it helps them learn better and it's easier to learn subjects. Not only is in-person learning better, but I also think that seniors are losing out on their last year. At least can we have 2 days a week at school? That's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabe. Next, we're going to hear from Alex Posey. Alex, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Oh, good, thank you. I will probably make this fairly quick. Everybody knows how awful this has been in school learning. It's, don't need to pile on there. We all want the kids back as much as possibly could be. What I'm just trying to understand is, it seems to me there has to be a massive communication failure that's happened here people are still asking why we're not doing what other schools are. And why is that? I would assume that the only reason we're not in school the same as the other schools is because it's logistically and physically impossible given our number of students, building size, whatever the metrics are. That would be the only acceptable reason. So why hasn't everyone been communicated that so they're not angry about it? So yeah, that's my main point I think I want to make. And, you know, I'm curious, I'm all about metrics, and, you know, I would assume at this point that the students have all been polled, so we know roughly how many want to go back to school. So you can divide that by the number of square feet and the number of hours in the day. And assuming that's happened, you know, is the answer 2 hours per day, twice a week for certain? Everyone thinks we can go more. I'm certainly hoping that we can go more, because that would have been the proposal instead. So I just would really encourage anyone responsible to put some very specific data out. Tell us why we can't do this. Everyone wants to go back for 2 days. Again, I kind of hope that's impossible, because otherwise it should have already been done. It should have been planned last fall, because we knew this was coming in the spring. So, you know, I'm a little befuddled on why the lack of communication is there. I really supported the plan in the fall, and I assume everyone is doing all they can. And that's really just, that's all I have to say. I really hope, you know, I don't like hearing people bad-mouthing the people who are running these things because they don't think they're doing anything. I refuse to believe that, and I believe it's just a communication problem, and that we need to know why the kids can't get back in school. And with that, I'll leave it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. Next, we're going to hear from Stacy. Stacy, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Stacy Hung. I live at 143 Summit Street, and I love that I'm going after the last person who spoke. I have very similar feelings. I didn't prepare to say anything tonight, but I've been sitting and listening to all of the students, and there are several reasons why we want our kids back to school. What I'm confused about, like Alex, is I think that there is a lack of understanding as to why just our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders can't go back to school. I am a school nurse, so I eat, breathe, sleep, and live COVID every single day. I am managing high school students at a neighboring town. We have 560 students in our school. We have been going since the fall, 2 days a week in cohorts, just like our elementary schools and our middle schools here in Portland. And we have been doing it very successfully. The science is proving that kids are safer at school. The science is proving that we are doing everything that we can, because kids are not transferring it in school or not transmitting it in school. They're getting it from outside community activities of what they're doing in their daily lives. And we have daily screeners, and we school nurses are working round the clock to make sure that our schools are safe. And the schools have been very safe all over the country. I just can't quite wrap my head around why Portland High School and Deering High School and Casco Bay can't figure out how to get the upper grades in. In the school district that I work in, we have about 2/3 of the same amount of students in the building as would one of our high schools, but we only have 1.5 floors. It's like 1/3 the size of Portland High School. And so there should be, metrically speaking, like Alex was saying, that there is plenty of space for all of those kids. The guidelines are 3 to 6 feet in distance, as long as they are masked. I would love to understand the rationale as to why kids can't be attending school in person. And I also have questions about even why the freshmen, I have a student who is a freshman, he has to go to school in the morning from 9 to 12, but then has to catch the metro to get home just to get on to an online class at 1:15. Why can't they just stay in school, go to lunch downtown like we all did when we went to Portland High School, grab lunch, go back and have more in-person learning? Why do they have to not be back in school for the rest of the afternoon? So there are lots of logistical questions, and it's not following the science behind the spread of the disease. The kids are safe as far as COVID goes, as well as they would be if they were even at home. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stacy. Next, we're going to hear from O'Heal. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes. O'Heal?
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say the last year. Now I wanted to say the COVID is still a really big problem in this country. I wanted to also say that 500,000 people have died of COVID. If I'm not mistaken, I lost a friend to COVID, and I feel like it's really irresponsible and selfish to bring kids to school because of something as social life. I feel like a lot of students want to get back to school to interact with a friend, and I feel like that's really selfish and irresponsible. And I also wanted to say that not too long ago, obviously I didn't like it. I didn't like the whole process, the whole experience. At first, I had to be at home, and I was really really sad, and but I found me and my friends turned this unfortunate event into a really fortunate event. We turned something bad into something good. One of my friends got a scholarship to play basketball. And I feel like that was possible because of the limited amount of school, and because we had school online. I feel like I got to, I had a lot of things done because I had school online. And I want to also say that, like Costa said, the people that don't want to come to school are people that skip school or are basically delinquent. And I wanted to say that I'm not a delinquent. I love school. I'm passing all my classes. I'm mentally stable. I'm emotionally stable. And I also don't like the fact that we're calling this whole process a school reopening, because we're not really reopening the school. The school is not being reopened. We're still going to school 2 days a week. We're not reopening the school. Nothing is getting back to normal. We're going to school 2 days a week. We have to social distance. We have to put a mask on. We're not getting prom this year. Nothing is getting back to normal. We're not reopening the school. That's not what is going on. So I don't like the fact that we are calling this whole process a school reopening. I just wanted to say that a lot of good thing in my life has come out of me being in school online. Like I got, I'm about to go visit the school, and a lot of things is going right because we have limited amount of school. I'm getting a lot of work done, especially because Wednesday is not school. And I feel like, I don't know, I just don't feel like want to get back to school because you want to interact with your friend is not a good reason for us to get back to school even for 2 days. You can't, if you want to interact with your friend, that's why they create a cell phone. You could call your friend and meet with them at their house. That's not illegal. You can easily go to your friend's house and talk to them. That's not a good reason to want to get back to school. So if someone disagrees with my reason, please give me a really valid reason to why we have to get back to school. We already did a lot of times without getting back to school, and the school is almost over. So it's like, there's really no point to get back to school. And having 2 days of school and 2 days of school online and 2 days of school in person it's not doing anything. It's just making you focus less on school online and more in school in person. And I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like, especially for the teacher that spoke about coming back to school because they wanted to interact with students, I'm really disappointed at the teachers because that's not a valid reason to want to come back to school because you want to see students. People are dying. People died. A lot of people have lost their life, their family to this disease. So I'm really disappointed at all the adults that were here talking about coming back to school because they want their kids to interact or they want to interact with students. That's really irresponsible, and I'm really disappointed, especially because Costa said, I don't know, I don't know. I feel like it's really irresponsible for people to say that they want to come back to school because they want to interact with people. I don't know. I wanted to say that it doesn't matter what the decision is, what you guys decide. I just wanted to say that I'm not coming back to school because I value my life. I'm coming back to school if the government says, oh, it's safe, the corona is completely gone, because that's not.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your 3 minutes is over.
I know that. Okay, I must stop there.
Would you like an extension?
Please, at least 3 seconds. I just wanted to say that the numbers are declining. Corona is not gone; it's still here, and I found a way to be productive, even by being.
Well, thank you so much. If you want an extension, at this point, I'm going to ask the board if they want to grant you an extension. Do you need more time?
Yes, I already said what I wanted to say. Thank you for letting me speak, and I'm about to leave the meeting, so have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to Rachel Pargeter. I'm going to try you again. Thank you so much for being patient. And are you able to join us?
I'm here.
Oh, excellent.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I had a headphone failure.
Thank you so much for being patient. I really appreciate it. And 3 minutes.
I appreciate you circling back to me so many times. So my name is Rachel Pargeter. I live on Payson Street in Portland. I have a 10th grader and a 12th grader at Portland High School. I personally agree with a lot of things that were said by another student who was concerned about forcing anyone to go back. I feel the same way. I don't feel that any teachers that are uncomfortable in the school building should be required to go into the school building, and I don't think any students that are uncomfortable going to the school building should be required to do so. And the plan was made to go fully remote with no remote academy because it was judged to be too difficult to come up with a remote academy with synchronous and asynchronous learning for students to be in and out of school for all the different classes that Portland High School and the high schools in Portland have. And there are also space restrictions. There are also commuting issues. There are also bus issues. And if there's no remote academy, then we can't force everyone to go back and make another difficult transition during the middle of the spring, like we had to do last year. I have one student who would come back. I have one student who is thriving in remote learning. So it's not difficult for everybody. Some people actually prefer it. And the biggest issue for me is that we would be having another major transition if this was forced. And the issue with requiring people to go back 2 days a week for Learning Center is that it actually decreases the flexibility of Learning Center for people to make appointments to go in. Some students actually will get less time in Learning Center under the proposed model of going back 2 afternoons a week than they would if they were able to make appointments 4 days a week because they were struggling. So those are the main points that I wanted to make. And I just wanted to point out that most people on the calls are saying that it doesn't work. It is working for some people, and another transition, again, at this point in time, could be very detrimental to students and staff. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I'm so glad you were able to join us. Now we're going to turn to Penelope St. Louis. Penelope, you have 3 minutes.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Penelope St. Louis. I live at Rosemont Avenue in Portland, Maine. I know that you are all familiar with me as I've been involved in this process since last August. This is one of the most important decisions that the school board is facing in recent times. I do believe, as elected officials, it is your obligation to hold a vote on this and not to make a deferral to school administration. This is your decision. Our students have expressed their emotional challenges, their academic challenges, and their social challenges to you tonight. And I would ask that you hold a special meeting and take a vote on returning the 10th through 12th graders to at least 2 days of school, academic learning each week from now until the end of this school year. I have looked at the administration's posted plan. I was encouraged that I was told to be patient and to look at an updated posting of additional information that would explain the plan. And when I looked at that with anticipation and a bit of glee, I was disappointed to see that it was really just a justification of why we can't, as opposed to why we can. There's every reason in the updated post of why we can't give our children the education that they deserve. The administration has really posted no plan. 2 days of, quote, second helpings. I don't think that's a term of art in the educational community, and I honestly don't know what that means. We have no time frame for the implementation of a plan that was supposedly developed last Thanksgiving. We continue to see a delay in the anticipated timeline for the implementation of some plan, and it consists of focus groups, meetings with teachers, and I don't know what else. But this was a plan that was supposedly developed and ready for implementation at Thanksgiving. It seems to me another delay. I don't know if a second helping is just another glorified learning center, which honestly, I think you all know, and I think Principal Jepson will acknowledge, at Portland High School has been an abysmal failure.
Penelope?
Yes?
Your time has expired. Do you want an extension?
I would like an extension.
All right.
I'm just going to ask you in summary.
Penelope, I just need to go to the board to... Is there a motion to extend her time? I see Ms. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Irish. All in favor? Okay, it looks to be unanimous. So Penelope,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I am just going to ask you in closing that you vote tonight to hold a special meeting so that the school board members can vote on a actual plan with a date of implementation to get our 10th through 12th graders who desperately need it back to school for in-classroom instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Penelope. Next, we're going to hear from Dominic Mofo. Dominic, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dominic Mofo, a junior at Portland High School, 61 Glenhaven Road West, Portland. And like many of my students, I am in favor of the hybrid reopening for 10th through 12th grade students. Virtual learning just isn't working for me and many of my other students anymore. Logging into a meeting for 5 minutes to take attendance and then go off on your own to read notes or watch a video and then try to do pages of homework you don't understand is not an effective way to learn. Since March, I've been doing this, and at this point, it's getting old. I can't do it anymore, and I know many of my fellow students can't. And also, the social aspect of school is an important part that none of us thought about before, and many took for granted. I think that it is clear from all the voices we have heard already and that we will hear after me that it is time to send us back to school, and it's time for the board to listen to the students and parents and send us back for learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominic. Okay, I do not see any other hands raised, so I'm going to close public comment. As a reminder, we will have another opportunity to comment on our high school plan after the superintendent's presentation and the board's questions. So with that, we are going to turn to the report of the chair. I don't have comments tonight due to just how much we have on our agenda. So we're going to move right to the report of the students. And tonight we have the pleasure of hearing from Emily Chang of Deering High School. So Emily, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. To preface to start my report, I want to start by saying that I didn't include part of my speech on the school reopening because I knew that it would take up the majority of the board meeting and I would have time to speak on it later on, and that a lot of any of the concerns I would have would be covered by all the students. I can confidently say any of the concerns I have been echoed through other students. So, and also I've been Googling how to calm a racing heart and it's not really helping, so you're gonna have to bear with me. Okay, let's get started. Oh, and I hope you take this as like a brief breath of air and then we'll get back into it. Okay. Hello, school board members and Portland Schools community. To start my report as a member of the school board and representative of DHS, I would like to start by thanking the students and parents in our community who have stayed patient during these trying months of Portland and the world. I would also like to commend those who are speaking up for the needs of their children. I hope you all will be a part of the process of moving towards a new and better normal for our district. Now, I would like to inform everyone on some projects that are or have taken place at Deering the last couple of months. Beginning with the Crosswalk painting project headed by DHS junior Emily Siegel, who is planning to gather many different clubs, teams, and organizations at Deering to paint the four-way crosswalk next to Deering High Fields. She aims to bring unity and connection to our Rambouillet. Deering's Key Club, a volunteering organization, had spent the early weeks of February making cards and posters to thank our frontline workers. These art pieces were dropped off at the emergency department at Maine Medical Center. In addition to thanking healthcare workers, the Student Senate recently created a video compilation of thank you messages from students to teachers. DHS students felt it was our duty to thank our teachers for a first semester like no other. One way Deering has been trying to connect students in this disconnected time is through our advisory program. With some skepticism from students on the purpose of advisory, we've brought in more student voices. Deering students have now been planning a unit/topic for each month. Last month, we had a unit on race and equity produced by students Balkis Mohammed, Hana Wallen, and Uma Mohammed. This month, our natural helpers have worked with our advisory program leaders, Ann Dixon and Heather Sawyer, on a unit about mental health and wellness, topics that are critical during these times. The last project I would like to mention is that Deering will start the process of looking for an assistant principal. Our administration plans to engage students and parents in this process. And beyond school projects, I'd like to congratulate some engaged and active Deering students, starting with the beloved Deering debate team. Our senior debate captains, Lynn Nguyen and Aiden Bloom-Levine, were able to place second in varsity debate at each tournament they've attended the last 2 months. Junior debaters Balkis Mohammed and Emily Chung placed first in varsity debate at the January 9th tournament. In the same tournament category, freshman Alice Searfloss and Rachel Merrill placed third despite it only being their first year and being put up against many seasoned debaters. Next, I would like to congratulate Megan Cunningham, who skied to first place on the February 10th and February 17th races, leading the Deering girls team to victory on the 10th. On the new Portland Deering co-op swim team has also enjoyed a great start to their season. Earlier this month, they came in second against Gorham and first against Bonnie Eagle. Our boys and girls basketball teams have also just recorded wins against Cape Elizabeth. For the Deering girls basketball team, this was a long-awaited victory as the Rams earned their first win in 2 years. Go Rams! Deering athletes are preparing for a special and safe spring season. Lastly, I would like to congratulate our spectacular class of 2021. 104 applications have been marked as accepted so far into 110 schools, including institutions such as Penn State, Clark, Colby, Northeastern, Stanford, MIT, and UPenn. And this now concludes my second board report for Deering High School. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chung. You hit it out of the park, and it sounds like congratulations are in order to you personally for the second time this meeting. And now we're going to move to the superintendent, who has the challenge of following your great report. So, Superintendent, it's time for for your report.
Yeah, Mr. Irish had his hand up, so I don't know if you wanted to acknowledge that.
Excellent job, Emily. That was an accidental hand raise.
Great. I would like to begin my comments today by recognizing the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand, the Maliseet, the Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland. We're honored to have their children among our students today. You may have noticed that we have a new face on our screen today. I would like to begin by introducing you to our new Director of Data and Technology, Gavin Goodall. I mentioned Gavin at our last meeting and said that we would get a chance to meet him soon, and he is here. Dr. Goodall started a couple of weeks ago, so this is his first board meeting. He comes to us from the Denver Public Schools, where he was most recently manager of school improvement. In Denver, he's also been a teacher and administrator in Denver schools and worked for Teach for America, Colorado. His PhD is in operations, research, and engineering from the Colorado School of Mines. So he brings tremendous strength to our data work, which we are incredibly excited to have. Gavin's wife is a principal in Denver and is originally from Portland. So they have, and we love this, ready-made roots in the area, and they will be relocating here as soon as the school year is over in Colorado. In the interim, Gavin is commuting and working in person remotely. He's actually here today, so I finally got to see him in 3D. So that was really cool. So Gavin, welcome to Portland Public Schools. And, if you want to just introduce yourself, say hi to the board.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your warm welcome in the chat. I don't have anything to add to what Javier already said. That was more of an introduction I could give, but I look forward to work. I'm excited to be working at the district and look forward to meeting with you guys going forward. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gavin. I want to take this opportunity for a last call for tomorrow's community conversation on school safety. This conversation is the next step in the process that we outlined after discontinuing our school resource officer program this past summer. Tomorrow's conversation is designed to bring members of the community together to develop a shared understanding of what it means to have safe schools and outline guiding principles for our work in the policy committee to revise the many policies that define the district's relationship with law enforcement and make decisions about reallocating the resources that were previously used for the school resource officer to other safety priorities. We have over 50 people, when I last checked, signed up for this conversation, which will be facilitated by New Hampshire Listens. And I would like to thank the working group that came together a month ago to help us establish the direction, and particularly thank Assistant Superintendent Aaron Townsend for his leadership in this work. So as you know, as part of our agenda today, we'll be discussing the development of the plans for increasing in-person instruction for our students in grades 10 through 12. As part of our ongoing efforts to update the board and community about our reopening efforts, we are planning to update on the work that's being done to improve remote instruction, particularly for the elementary and middle grades. And so Assistant Superintendent Malia Nally and Curriculum Director Jesse Robinson will be doing that at next week's board meeting. So this is a preview of that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Now we'll move to the report of the Secretary. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of February 2nd, 2021. Is there a motion? I see Mr. Rodriguez, seconded by Ms. Thompson. Are there any questions on the motion? Is there any public comment on the motion? So this is approval of our minutes from our last meeting. Is there any board discussion on the motion? Okay, by roll call vote, please indicate whether you're in favor of approving the meeting minutes from our February 2nd, 2021 meeting. Superintendent, will you take the roll?
Yes. Ms. Bondo?
Abstain.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Mr. Irish?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Russell Better?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
Mr. Youssef?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Ms. Boxer McCumber?
Yes.
Ms. Chung?
Yes.
Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Yangala?
Yes.
And Chair Figdor?
Yes. The motion passes unanimously with the students voting in the majority. So now it is time for our board focus on educational issues. We have 2 tonight. We're starting with our LAU plan, and then we'll move to school reopening. After the presentation and board questions on school reopening, there'll be an opportunity for members of the public to share their views. If you're a member of the public and have already spoken tonight, you can follow up with the board via email or speak at our meeting next Tuesday. And for folks who want to email us, you can reach the full school board by emailing schoolboard@portlandschools.org. So that's schoolboard@portlandschools.org. So, Mr. Superintendent, I'm going to turn it over to you for both of the board focuses.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we continue our series of board focus on educational issues designed to build the board and the community's understanding around key issues that we will be prioritizing in the FY22 budget proposal, which I'm scheduled to present on March 16th. Tonight's presentation will focus on our LAU plan implementation. For those not familiar with this topic, this is our plan for meeting the needs of our students who are English language learners. The name LAU comes from the 1976 Supreme Court case that recognized that students whose first language is not English cannot access learning without specialized supports. Those more familiar with the plan also know that in our universe of priorities, this one rises above all others in terms of what I think is most meaningful and important to becoming the school district that we want to become. When you look at all measures of performance, there is no group of students with more unrealized potential. When you think about what it takes to help fulfill that potential, there's no place where we are clearer and more certain in our understanding of what it takes. So this is a pivotal building block for this board and the district. We've made small incremental moves along the way to operationalize this plan, and we need to continue to start making bold moves if we're serious about realizing that unfulfilled potential. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Malia Nally, who's here with her team to update you on the plan and to discuss its budget implications. Malia.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second to share my screen. Okay. Great. Can you see that okay?
No, we can't.
Oh, I'm seeing some yeses and some nos. Aaron, can you just go ahead and share it instead? Thank you. Great. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be brief. I'm here with Carlos Gomez, who's our Director of Language Development, and he'll be stepping you through the presentation this evening. I just wanted to give you a sense of the conversation we want to have with you all. So if you can forward it, Aaron, to the next slide. So this evening, Carlos is going to step you through an overview of who our English language learners are. So giving you a sense of the student group, how many students we have in our district who are English language learners, and a little bit more about their background. Then he's going to talk more about what the superintendent started to describe in terms of where the LAU plan comes from and how we see the moral and legal obligation to implement our plan is connected to our equity goals. We'll talk briefly about some of the key features and areas of emphasis that exist within the district's LAU plan. This will be a recall for many of you who've heard Carlos and team update or provide presentations on what this plan is and what's behind it previously. And then we will remind you of the investment requests brought forward in the budget last year, all of which ended up unfunded. And we'll talk a little bit about the implications of that in terms of what we've been able to do this year for our students. And that will lead to kind of our conclusion around what we'll be proposing in the superintendent's budget this coming year. And that's it. We'll have some time for questions. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Carlos, to step us through that presentation.
Muchas gracias, Assistant Superintendent Natalie. Good to be here with you all tonight. We'll go through this. This is, to me, an exciting opportunity to highlight all the great things that we're doing and some of the things that are undone that will enhance our work. So first, let's just take a quick dive into who our English language learners are, or multilingual English learners. On the next slide, you'll see simple bar graph, and let me just guide you through it. You have in blue students and English learners from 5 years ago, and our current students in red. The two bars on the left side are level 1 and 2 students. So these are students at the beginning of their English language learning journey. We refer to them often as needing intensive English language development. And you see that on the left-hand side. The right-hand side, the 2 bars on the right, have students who are at levels 3, 4, or 5 in terms of English language proficiency. And these students are students that have academic language skills, and we're supporting their development of those skills. These levels that you see come from the WIDA organization that works with many English learners across the country. Typically, an English learner will become proficient in 4 to 7 years. The Maine Department of Education has a target of about 5 years of receiving services to reach what the Maine Department of Ed deems as proficient, which is a level 4.5. As you can imagine, the students who are at the beginning of that journey have much longer to go in their proficiency. Students progress at different rates. And the main takeaway from this chart is that 5 years ago, the number of students that represented by the blue bars, we had fewer students at the beginning of that journey. And currently we have, in red, more students beginning at that journey. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through this. And on the next slide, we get a little deeper into who our student population is today. The first thing to note is that these numbers are dynamic. They change regularly based on national and international forces. Sometimes frequent and unpredictable spikes occur. For example, we're anticipating an increase in new arrivals based on the recent change in presidential administration priorities. So what our population looks like now can look different in 6 months or a year from now. But as we highlighted, more students are at that level 1 and 2. We also have students that recently exited EL services and are in monitoring. So we keep close monitoring of the students that recently exited. The pie graph on the right there is a representation of our largest languages. And you'll see Portuguese, Somali, Arabic, French, Spanish and Lingala as some of our larger languages. Several of them are our fastest growing languages. And we have a unique situation in Portland, which is we have over 65 home languages spoken. And another thing to keep in mind during this conversation here is that our community is multilingual, and whereas many English learners across the country are often bilingual, focusing in mostly in Spanish, but we have more than 65 languages, as I mentioned. The other important thing to note is that many of our recent arrivals are asylum seekers, and typically our asylum seekers have increased social emotional needs due to recent trauma, and unfortunately have less access to social services than refugees who were part of that profile of students from 5 years ago. So we'll go a little deeper on the next slide, and just want to just highlight a couple of things here. When we say English learners, multilingual students who are English learners, we're talking about students who have proficiency 1 through 4.4, as well as our students who are we're monitoring. We have students who are recent arrivals, and key thing here is some students who are literate in their home language and some students who are not literate in their home language. And there are different programming implications. On the right side, a couple of acronyms, SLIFE. We have students who have limited or interrupted formal education. We have students who have not reached proficiency in the 5-year target range of the Maine Department of Education. We have students who are dual identified, that they have specialized instruction and are English learners. And we have students who are recently or currently homeless, Americanibento students. Oftentimes, there's an overlap of all of these characteristics in our English learners. So, what programming is helpful and useful for a student who is at a level 4 English language proficiency with prior education, compared to a student who's at level 1 who's maybe dual identified with some interrupted education is very different. So on the next slide here, I do want to remind us that our students, our multilingual students who are English learners, are also assets. These are some of these assets include the future ability of navigating American and other cultures seamlessly. That experience of being an English learner can lead many students, once they become proficient in English, to often outperform students who are monolingual speakers, English speakers. Many of our multilingual English learners reach the seal of biliteracy at a greater rate in more varied languages than we can possibly offer. And our students will become, our future teachers, our future healthcare workers, civil servants, business leaders in this community, and ultimately adults who build bridges and friendships and understandings and bonds, and we all benefit from this. So I want to make a connection here on the next slide. How can we advance our equity goal through the full implementation of our LAO plan? And how do we go from aspiring equity to achieving equity? But first, A reminder, hopefully you can recall from last year, or if you're new to the board, you had a chance to review our presentation from last year. But just a reminder of what the LAU plan is. Every district that has multilingual English learners must have a LAU plan with a community's context in mind. As Superintendent Botana mentioned, prior to the 1970s LAU Supreme Court case, if a student didn't know English, basically the student was out of luck and had no access to education if they did not know English. So that changed as a result of our LAU plans. And I'm not going to show it now, but there is a video that succinctly kind of reminds us in the first 5 minutes or so why learning English is such a fundamental right. The main takeaway for us here is that we as a school district are responsible for teaching content and English to our multilingual English learners. The LAU plan gives all educators the guidance to know who our multilingual English learners are, to identify their strengths and their needs, and to provide a level of resource that will maximize and unleash their potential. So that's why we have LAU plans. The other piece on the next slide is sort of that connection to equity. And basically the LAU plan is a roadmap to equity, a roadmap to achievement for our multilingual English learners. Specifically, the plan tells us how to identify students, how to support them, how to teach them, how to assess them, how to communicate with the families of multilingual English learners, ultimately how to exit students from EL services, and how to monitor students during and after that exit. Over multiple years, across multiple schools during their language journey. And, it is a good time to remember part of the equity definition in our Portland Promise is that, that equity is different and distinct from equality. Equity requires understanding that sameness of services will not achieve success for all students. So what are the key features of the district's LAU plan? First of all, I want to say I'm proud of this work. I'm proud of the team of people who helped develop the LAU plan that we revised last year. I believe that we've breathed a life into this plan, which oftentimes these plans are about compliance, but I think we've made it a call to greater rigor, higher expectations for all of us, and equity for our students. So the next slide basically is an orientation to the LAU plan. So if I could boil it down into a couple of things, our plan calls for all teachers to be language teachers, equipped not only to serve our English learners, but all academic language learners, which is all of our students. It also, the plan calls for meeting students' needs, customizing their learning, having that individualized approach that we know is sound educational practice. And as you can see from the complexity of our English learners, that there needs to be variable approaches to teaching our multilingual learners. And the other thing that the plan calls for is focusing on language really as an asset and not as a barrier, which is a huge mind shift for our society in general, and by extension, our district and our community. So, so I'm going to focus on the next slide some key programming issues. You see them in front of you there around collaboration and coaching, about programming for students with limited and interrupted formal education, language support, and dual identified students, as well as endorsement of students. So let me just make sure we're on the same slide here. Great, thank you, Erin. So implications and impact. So this is a reminder also that last year we proposed some investments that unfortunately were unfunded. And these two slides here have just a reminder of what those were around collaboration, which we already discussed a little bit, but basically giving our students, making choices for our EL teachers to support. Basically, we currently, the update on our collaboration is that we have had to focus our EL teachers on supporting our ILD students, which has led to some negative impacts on our ability to meet our needs for our CAL students, for our higher English proficiency students. As far as secondary SLIFE programming, we have been able to partially fund some programming at one of the high schools, and there is some momentum, but that is funding that will go away at the end of this year, and we want to keep that going. In terms of our dual identified investments from last year, so just a reminder that about 25% of our students who are receiving specialized education services are English learners with diverse and complex needs, a couple of which are subject to some legal cases that to ensure that we're doing our due diligence with our students. So, that's an area that we want to support. On the next slide, we have, in terms of heritage language instruction and language support, this is an investment that we proposed last year. We know that literacy in home language leads to proficiency in English, and that a smooth transition to American schools at any age is vital for getting students to land on their feet and ready to learn content and language in schools. We're piecing together some of that language support, but the demand continues to outweigh our ability to provide that support. And then the final area there around EL certification for our math and literacy coaches and learning strategists. We've found that a very effective way to expand language instruction is by empowering those educators who have the widest range and effect of reaching the most teachers and students, and that would be our coaches. So, want to take a moment here on the next couple of slides to talk about what our what we requested last year specifically, and what we're requesting this year. So, slide 18 there, and thank you. So this is in terms of the previous slides kind of gave a programmatic description. This is more of a staffing and cost analysis of what those investments were. And you see essentially, for example, in collaboration and instruction, we were looking at approximately 6.8 teachers altogether at the elementary and secondary level, and you see the costs associated with that. Same thing for heritage language support, and all the way through the other secondary SLIFE, dual identified, and instructional coaches certification. So that on slide 19, I think gives you essentially the same ask as last year for the most part. The thing that is different is that first area around collaboration and specialized instruction. There was an increase of approximately from 6.8 to 12 FTEs for teachers. And I just want to take a moment to highlight why that is the case. First of all, for this current year, we will be asking, and hopefully you recall the presentation that Sue Chevalier, the director of pre-K programming for the district, gave a few weeks ago. We will be asking for 3.5 pre-K dual language learner teachers, ELL teachers essentially for the preschool. As those classrooms expand from 13 to 15, in order to meet what we're anticipating as approximately 40% of our pre-K students, 45% of our pre-K students being language learners. The slight increase in elementary programming has to do with our deeper analysis of students who we have identified, that dual identification of specialized instruction and English learners, as well as some of the programming for our level 1-2 students and level 3-4 students at the elementary and high school level. Everything else, heritage language, life, those requests and investments are essentially the same. I do want to, on the next slide here, I'm not sure if Grace or somebody else was going to speak to the investments related to the LOUD plan, but not necessarily living in the Department of Language Development, but in the Multicultural and Multilingual Center, where we're also requesting a full-time social worker and additional support for those languages that are fastest growing, and we're in need of Spanish and Lingala. So that is, I don't know if anybody else wanted to speak to that, but
I think
essentially,
I know that Grace is not able to join us today, so I know that this, I mean, you covered it, Carlos. That's exactly what these positions are. They're not in the, they're in the Multilingual Multicultural Center, but they're directly related to our increased needs for, as you talked earlier about asylum seeker students and needing to have some additional built-in supports for that, as well as the increase in the Lingala and Spanish population, which we need to add parent community specialist services for.
Great. Thank you, Javier. And then the last slide there before our questions, essentially just in closing, just want to remind us that the LOUD plan and these investments associated with the LOUD plan are sort of our guide and our help to reach equity, and also a reminder that what is important and good and critical for our English learners, for our multilingual students who will become multilingual, proficient in English and several other languages, those instructional skills are good for all students. And this is a case where these investments will lift teaching and learning across the district. So I'll leave it at that. Malia, I don't know if you wanted to add anything or if you wanted to go straight to questions, but thank you for your time, and look forward to answering what I can.
Thank you, Carlos. And I would just say in summary before we go into the questions that I think what we want folks to understand is, again, that what we've brought to you before is that we have a moral and a legal obligation to provide the services called for in our law plan. And we do need to invest more deeply in those priorities and in those programmatic supports for our students. And so this isn't new, and but we want you to sort of reground in where this is coming from, why this is such a critical need, and what these specific programs and services are that would result from these types of investments being made in the implementation of the full LAU plan as it's intended. So thanks again, Carlos, for your update. And yeah, I think, Emily, we can take questions from members of the board.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Malia. What questions do the board members have? Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Carlos and Malia, for the presentation. As I've said last year, this is a big missed opportunity from the board as a key investment in our district, and so I'm very excited to see it back on the slate. One of the most, I need someone to mute themselves. I'm annoying enough. I don't want to hear myself. One of the most troubling findings from last year's presentation of the LAU plan was the discrepancies with the duly identified students and the exaggerated number of ELL students that were identified to be special ed, who once they were truly assessed were deemed not to be special ed. So we were, in essence, looking at their language capabilities as a disability. So I'm wondering, number one, during the pandemic, how did our assessment process alter? What is our current ratio of duly identified students compared to before? Have we corrected that discrepancy? And in line with that same question, what is our current psychologist to case or to student case ratio? So how many cases is each of our school psychologists, or is our school psychologist managing? And how does that compare to the national averages?
Carlos, do you want to speak first to just the assessment practices question? And then I'm mostly going to talk about my next steps for your questions, Mr. Rodriguez, but yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that the challenge of separating language from ability or disability is a nationwide challenge. This is something that a lot of school districts are wrestling with, especially urban multilingual districts. The state of Maine is currently, the Maine Department of Education is currently working on specific guidance around this for the school districts in the state. And luckily we have our EL specialist, Maureen Fox, who's on leave this year, helping to guide that work at this at the state level as a kind of as an expert in the field. The other thing I would say is that the proposal that we're putting here around dual identified students will help us fine tune those procedures, help us to look more clearly at the response to intervention and other steps along the way to a special education referral. So that investment in the dual identified point person at the district would go a long way in that work. As far as what we've been able to do this year, Mr. Rodriguez, the reality is that we've at best kind of maintained and kept steady given the pandemic and the situation. We're trying to monitor it. We have our new director of student services student support services that I'm meeting with on a regular basis, and our departments are keeping this on the front burner as much as we can for right now. But the reality is in terms of numbers, I don't have the numbers to tell you if there's been a big shift. My sense is that there hasn't in terms of how many were identified. I think we were about the same. The count for this year is about 260 students who are dual identified, and we were at about 258 or somewhere in that ballpark last year.
Thanks, Carlos. And just regarding the second part of your question, I think I will follow up with Jesse Applegate, our Director of Student Support Services, for the specific information you asked for in terms of the school psych to student ratio. We've just reviewed it as we've been looking at staffing for this coming year, so I can get that to you pretty easily. And I just wanted to underscore what Carlos said about the collaboration between the Language Development Department and the Special Education Department. I'm personally super excited because Jesse comes to us from work in New York City, where this one of his sort of big priorities and areas of focus was around students who are dually identified. So he comes with an experience and an orientation to really look at this and make sure we're separating difference from disability. Sue Chevalier, our Director of Pre-K Programs, is also coming from that orientation in terms of her background and is doing a lot of thinking about that at the early levels in terms of when students come into the system as well.
Great. I would look forward to that. I do recall the numbers from last year, but clearly having our current numbers would be really helpful. I don't have any other questions right now. I do want to hear what other board members want to inquire, and I look forward again to learning more about this. I just want to, since it is my job to give opinions here while you guys be objective, I find that when we say that this is our moral and legal obligation, I appreciate that that's the way that we're framing this. I think it's even more dire than that. I think that I recall a meeting actually probably about a year ago, when we were reviewing the achievement gap data across the state and compared to other districts, our students who are on low socioeconomic status underperform others. And when the question was asked, why are poor students in Portland worse than poor students elsewhere in Maine, the answer was very direct by the superintendent and very accurate. And it was that because we have not invested in the needs of those students over time. And so here we are with an opportunity to bridge the gap on a lack of investments on a group of students who so direly need it. And so again, I'm really excited that this is back on the slate. I'm eagerly awaiting supporting this to be in our budget. And like I said, look forward to hearing the rest of the conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rodriguez. Ms. Bondo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just need to go back what we just mentioned about to Mr. Rodriguez about the legal terms of the law plan. I think since 1964, that term was powerful at that time. And I think coming to the 21st century, what we see happening now, that term is being overdue. And I feel like this is a great move because we have missed the opportunity last year without knowing that the pandemic will be the central issue since last year. So we can see now, before the pandemic, our EL students, they were already facing a lot of issues with achievement gap or all the different aspects. So what we have now to be like taking more intensive intervention to try to make sure that we can minimize at the end of the year of school to be below the reading level. So I think what we are thinking now is that what we're thinking out of the box. if we see the mainstream now with the pandemic and then all the issue with the remote learning being just reducing a lot of the literacy skills among our students. So what we think about the immigrant and low-income families, what they are facing as a situation, to try to improve their literacy skills. And I think the law plan, and I will support that to be on the budget for the year fiscal year 22, because we need it. It's overdue. Is really overdue. I still recording last year presentation we have about the dual identification, identified student over 240, but today we cannot really have the accurate number how many we do have. It should be more increased than we had last year, because with everything that we've been facing regarding to the pandemic. My first question, I think we already answered, was what Mr. Rodriguez just asked. So my second question is that I remember in the district, we are counting also the bilingual American born, I mean the student who are born here, but having a bilingual student. Are we still counting them in the same pool, or those are already exceeding the 4.5 earlier?
Thank you, Ms. Bando. Essentially, and I think this is true across the country, approximately half of the students who are identified as English learners are U.S.-born students who grow up in multilingual families, so non-English speaking families often, and come to school on the first day not knowing English. In fact, I was one of them. I showed up in kindergarten knowing only Spanish, and everything was in English. But this was right around Lao time, the Lao Supreme Court decision. But essentially, every student upon entering and enrolling in a school district completes a home language survey, and then there's a whole process, and the Lao plan kind of describes what that process is. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter where the student is from or where the student was born. They are by law, they must be assessed in English if they are identifying English as a language, or if they are identifying a language other than English at home.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Can we have some accurate numbers of all those questions? I mean, how many students we had last year? We had already the figure. How many we have actually for this year in that sample? Can we have those accurate numbers? Okay.
I was just going to say I can pull up this year's and get last year's as well.
Okay. And do we have that's something that you can follow up to me later on. How many are we thinking they're going to be at the end of the year below the grade level?
It's a good question. Tough to say right now. What I would say about that is, with the hybrid schedule that we're doing currently, and the school district and the school board and our community's support for the beginning level English proficient students, so our IELD students, we have based on family feedback and teacher feedback, we have offered additional supports for them in terms of in-person instruction, and that has in many cases helped propel students' progress in English language development. And that's a good kind of lesson to learn from this year, that with concentrated investment and support, we can make strides. So we are in the process this second semester of using formative assessments, other types of assessments. We're not giving access this year based on, again, our community's and school board decision to recognize that is not useful information at this point. So we do have other measures that we're using to assess students' progress in English.
Okay.
But that won't be available for a while.
Okay, so you just mentioned about the support. I think those are our students who going 4 days a week, right? Those are included to the pool of students. So I just need to have just a small piece of the support they're getting, because I know last year we've been having some other intensive intervention like a heritage language and some other the activities just to boost the language acquisition. So for this year, with the remote learning and everything, what kind of challenge to try to implement those kind of activities, or we have creating some all different activities beside of that?
So challenges for implementing remote learning, Ms. Bondo, is that?
Yes, with the language acquisition for those students.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge has been meeting the needs of students who are further along in their English language proficiency. So our cognitive academic language skills students are students who have been here for a couple of years, have that conversational, can get by with peers and in the classroom, but they are developing that academic language. I would say that we have not been able to give the same attention to the students who are at that level of English proficiency.
Okay. So how do we engage with the parents?
I think classroom teachers continue to engage with parents, so the students are in the classroom teachers' classrooms. So in the same ways that schools communicate and teachers communicate with students and families, oftentimes through interpreter support and through the multilingual, multicultural center, through some of the schools that have language support in the ways of ed tech. So the ways to communicate are various, but we know that it's sound practice for schools to be communicating with families to support students' needs there.
Yeah, okay. I will hold some of my questions, but the last quick one, are we thinking or see something that we can do during summer to help them? Because I remember last year you was sending books at home, doing those kind of activities. Are we projecting those kind of thinking for summer to try to boost and to empower those students?
Yeah, and I can jump in on that, Carlos, if you want. And I just want to make underscore one point from your previous question, Ms. Bondo, which is when Carlos, and just for the others to understand, when he was talking about the challenge has been in serving students who are further along in their English language development, just want to connect that back to that conversation we're having where we continue to experience our teachers that tension between providing the direct intensive language support and collaborating with teachers around how to make the content accessible. Right. And so we've ended up having to make a choice. So there's been incredible growth for a lot of our students who are IELD. So in the very beginning stages of learning English, because we've been able to put our time, attention, and energy on providing additional support for those students. So that 4-day model. So it's been, and Carlos mentioned this, it's been actually amazing in some cases to see how much growth we're seeing. And that's been one of these lessons, like how do we learn from this and take this forward? And how do we do that in a way that's not compromising the other type of work our teachers need to be doing, because they have to make choices with where their time goes because we are spread thin on that. So I just wanted to really make sure that was clear there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in terms of the summer programming, we're right in the middle of a big conversation around our summer strategy broadly in terms of how do we anticipate trying to invest more in the summer experience and ongoing additional supports than we have historically because of all of the needs that our students have after this year. So Language Academy, I know you're familiar with, is something that we're looking to continue to do. And then we're working with schools right now on how to think about funding different strategies that will provide the supports for students over the summer as well as into the school year, because we know we don't have all the precise academic achievement data at the moment, but we do know that there's obviously going to be a lot of additional need academically and socially, emotionally as well.
Thank you so much. If it's funded, this is going to be a game change for our students. Thank you so much. And I'm done, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bondo. Ms. Russell-Better. Or you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Malia and Carlos, for the presentation and the great questions from my colleagues. I just had, well, first I wanted to share that I just agree with Mr. Rodriguez and just that this is critical investment, and just feels like an enormous opportunity for us to really walk the walk, right? That we're talking about equity, every day, right? So if this isn't an opportunity to make good on, this focus that we have, I don't know what is. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I had just a follow up, Carlos, to Mr. Rodriguez's question about the special ed, the double, what is it called, dual identified students. And I'm just remembering this before I was on the board, kind of listening a little bit about this. And I know you mentioned the student support services role potentially, but I just was curious if you could help me with, the pieces of the budget that you shared. Are there pieces in there that would address that issue of trying to get to kind of the bottom of those students being identified as they are and how to repair that? Like, could you help just kind of with those budget items and those roles, help me see how those positions or investments might affect that situation?
Sure. So in terms of the dual identified student supports role, I'm in the group of people who put together this proposal are envisioning basically a special educator with an EL endorsement, with a deep knowledge of assessment and systems to refer, to identify, to sort of the full continuum of services that students with specialized instruction and individual language plans would have. So this is somebody that can help us. The LAU plan and the handbook and some of the guidance that will be coming from the Department of Education over the next few months will give us a deeper sort of best practices on how to work and support our dual identified students. We also have, one of the great joys of working in Portland Public Schools, we have extremely knowledgeable staff that at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, who have a deep knowledge and practice in this work. So the idea is to have that investment around the dual identified student support help us to operationalize those best practices and create a culture and systems and procedures to help meet our students' needs.
Can I just add something to that? I entirely agree with that, but I also, when you think about it, enabling collaboration and specialized instruction, I think one of the big barriers and the reason the kids are referred is that they're in a classroom where they're struggling and a teacher needs help, and special ed is viewed as help. And so those referrals happen. And before you know it, that's how the students get in there. So I think, having that level of additional collaboration and support with, specialized EL teachers pushing into classrooms and supporting the work that mainstream classroom teachers are doing is a key part of that. And I would also add that the dual certification, the more people we have that have knowledge and understanding of how best to meet the needs of English learners, the more likely we are to make sound decisions about referrals and things like that.
Oh, thank you. I had a couple of short questions, but just to follow up, Carlos, it was really helpful, the piece about practices and culture and procedures. That really helps me. I mean, besides the detail of what someone with the special ed and EL brings, but that's what that role would be, is developing those, right? The practices and to change the culture of collaboration, it sounds like. Can you just help me with getting my head around, like, are there folks already in our district, or is it really about just really helping, say the special ed, the person who's doing that, or get the credentials for EL or ESOL? I'm sorry, I don't have the right acronym maybe for what their credential would be. Is it about having to add that, or is it finding people who have those, just to help me get like what the need is for those two specialties?
I think it's both. Build our current staff's knowledge around this. So the ESOL certification is essentially 5-course endorsement. So it's beyond what the teacher is certified for, and it gives teachers sort of a wide view of English learner characteristics, and I think it gives teachers an extra lens, and a very specific lens. So there are some key folks. Some people already have it. Some people are working towards it. Some people will quickly gravitate towards it, given their current teaching situation and the students in front of them. And also, it's also through hiring. So as we hire new people, we would love them to have that certification or that experience and willingness. And really, I think it's Massachusetts has all teachers must be EL certified or have some certification. And in a way, it feels like Portland should as well. Very different from the rest of the state, but currently the state does not have that requirement. So, but that's certainly something that we're looking for across our hires.
Okay, great. So it sounds like building capacity within, and then also maybe expecting or looking for that background when hiring. That's helpful. Okay, so just the other two quick questions were just an observation. I just wanted to say I love that, and I don't know if this is a best practice or that this is developed through PPS, but that idea of the literacy specialist, maybe you said math as well, but I know I heard the literacy specialists wanting them to get the ESOL credential, right? That was a priority. And I just from my own anecdotal experience of the amazing literacy specialist in the building my kids have been in for years, that just makes so much sense to me, that their skills and what they're bringing to the work, to be able to add that piece just seems huge. And so I just was curious, I know you put the number of positions in the budget, the request, but I was just curious, are there some of them in the district that do have those both now, but most don't?
Yes, essentially, yes. A handful of people that do have it or are one course away or and I would reemphasize, if I could do that little emoji and the exclamation part emoji. I would just say that, transforming our core instruction is one of our academic team's key goals, and differentiating and providing supports and scaffolding for all learners. And, if we can't magically kind of get everyone certified the EL and ESOL endorsement. The next best step is how do we get that knowledge to key people who have the most contact and influence in teaching and learning, and it is through our literacy coaches and math coaches and learning strategists, and one of the key things around our illustrative math curriculum is around language speaking about and discourse to understand the concepts of math, and the EL language development strategies that are good for English learners are good for all math learners in that context. So our math is a wonderful place. STEM sciences are a wonderful place to inject these language development strategies. And that's where we get, I like the acronym ALLS, ALLS, academic language learners. All students are academic language learners. And if we have science teachers and math teachers and third grade teachers who are excellent language teachers and have language goals in addition to their content goals front and center, and we're assessing those, that's some power right there.
Wonderful, thank you. Last quick question was just, I know you had mentioned the presentation about, I think it was 130 something students that were at that needed just monitoring was kind of where they were at. Would that be the higher proficiency? Like how was that? Would they be in that category of the CAL?
Yeah, essentially they are the students who have recently exited.
Okay.
So just because they reached 4.5 on the WIDA scale, the Maine Department of Education recognizes them as proficient, but there's still more journey, and so we're it's important for us to see how they're progressing and making proper progress.
And that's developing the academic language like you were mentioning.
Right.
So what does and this is just the last piece, I was just trying to wrap my head around what that next step is. What does that monitoring look like now? Is there anything in that budget? I mean, are you trying to have something further for that monitoring that you're not able to do now?
I think, in terms of monitoring, it's typically done by the classroom teachers who have the recently exited students in their classroom. If they're struggling, they, will take all the common sort of interventions and referrals to additional support. And at some point in that process, early on, our EL teachers will know who the recently exited students are, and will again measure, monitor. Is this a language issue? Is this something else? Maybe it's a student that's been away. Maybe this is pre-COVID times. So maybe goes back to another country or a community where English isn't spoken as much. Is there some backslide there? Is there some other reason? So that monitoring really just kind of drills down a little bit more closely, and it's basically to say we have not forgotten you, and we're not expecting you to. We want you to fly, but if you're not taking flight, and it's because of language, we're there for you.
And I just want to make the connection to the areas of investment there, which is that so teachers have, they're providing direct language instruction, they're doing collaboration with teachers to make the core curriculum more accessible, and then have students that they're monitoring for in the ways that Carlos just described. So when you see those additional EL teachers, again, the ask there is coming from this tension our teachers experience with having to make hard choices and trade-offs about where they put their time and where they deprioritize. So that's kind of connected into that particular investment that we're proposing, so that we can genuinely see through all the parts of the service and support that we need to for our students.
Great, thank you both so much.
Are there other board questions? Ms. Bondo.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I have to ask that question. Carlos, about the long-term EL students, how long we have to consider them to be a long-term? And do we have any accurate numbers? How many we had a long-term last year and how many we have this year? And from which grade we see them considered to be a long term, and when we stop to get them some support, because we really need to have a time frame. How we do with them? Do we really have an issue, or what's going on with the long term EL students? Can you just speak a little bit about that, please?
Sure. I guess the technical definition of a long-term English learner in Maine is a student who has been receiving EL services for more than 5 years in school, and has not yet reached 4.5 proficiency on the access test. In general, that basically we're looking at students who are, maybe grades 4 and 5 that have been with us receiving EL services since kindergarten or pre-K. The reality is most students who start with us early on in pre-K and K will reach that proficiency within 5 years by the time they leave elementary school. But there are cases where that does not happen, and then you see students in middle school and in high school that have been receiving EL services for multiple years. So all along the way, we have EL teachers, we have classroom teachers, we have other student study teams and other groups that are identifying are seeing if a student is not making that progress and are putting in supports along the way. Sometimes those supports are effective. Sometimes there's something else going on, or perhaps students coming from other districts that have received different EL supports and then arrive to us later on in their journey, and we have to sort of unravel we have to kind of look into what's the cause of that. So I can get you those numbers.
Carlos, I just looked up our current data shows we have 209 students who are long-term Ls, looking in your staffing spreadsheet, and then we could follow up with where we were last year at this time as a follow-up step.
All right. Okay. If I have some more follow-up questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bando. Ms. Chung.
And this is just a really quick comment, not really a question, but I just wanted to thank everyone who's been working on this project, because when I was younger, I was also a part of this program, part of like the English learners, and it was definitely a challenging time. And I always felt like I was kind of underneath certain people, and that because I wasn't like very fluent in English, that meant that like all my learning was just like, I felt like I was being told that I had these barriers and that I needed to do certain things that other people didn't in order to get to the same level. So I appreciate the work being put into this. Thank you.
And Emily, I know that you recently assessed for the seal of biliteracy, and that in fact what others perceived as barriers are actually your gift and our gift, and multilingualism, and thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chung. Ms. Bando, do you have another question?
I'm sorry, I suppose, be out long time. I forgot to lower my hands. Thank you. Sorry.
I had one quick question. I don't see any other board members now, but as I'm asking my question, perhaps if any other board members have a last question themselves. Hearing about the success this year with IELP students, I'm wondering, do the investments that we discussed tonight for FY 2022 include kind of lessons learned or things that we can learn from the success this year and carry forward?
Thank you, Ms. Vigdor. Absolutely. I think there have been some great learnings, everything from, technology that we're using, such as Seesaw to capture oral speaking skills, to really like the collective efficacy and belief that our teachers, when focusing their energy and their abilities on a specific goal to move specific students in a concentrated way, can make that progress. Digging into that is critical. On Thursday, we're actually coming back together with the group of educators who proposed that or helped to implement that 4-day in-person support, and reflecting on what is working and what we can bring with us moving forward. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. If there aren't any other board questions, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Gomez and Ms. Nally. This has been a really informative presentation. Ms. Bondo talked about funding the LAO plan, as you discussed tonight, as a game changer for our students. And I just want to bring us back to the fact that these are investments that we have not made year after year, and that these students, that is so long overdue. And so it is incumbent on us to actually follow through. And I am so appreciative of the vision and the planning and the work that's gone into proposing these investments for the coming year. So thank you so much. And with that, I think we can move on to the next board focus.
Just very quickly, wrapping this one up, thank you to Carlos and Malia and Carlos's entire team that helped to put this presentation together, more importantly, to put the LAO plan together. I also just want to remind the board that this is the second of 3 board focus sessions that we have scheduled in preparation of the upcoming budget, and the next one will be a week from today, when we will focus on our diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring, and the work that's happened around that, and the things that we envision need to happen to really help us to advance that work as a district. So Barb Stodder's been working hard to get ready for that, so I hope that you will benefit from that in the same way that I think we've benefited from the early childhood presentation and the LAO presentation today.